The stars above Velkara Prime had not shone in 3 cycles. Not because of clouds. Not because of storms. But because the Drachneth fleet, 1,700 warships strong, had parked itself between the planet and its sun, casting the world into an artificial twilight that smelled of burning metal and broken promises. Commander Kale Veyron stood at the shattered viewport of what had once been the Resistance Command Center, now little more than scorched durasteel and exposed wiring. Around him, the survivors of the Velkaran resistance huddled in silence. 23 soldiers. 23 where there had once been 4,000. "We have perhaps 6 hours before they breach the lower bunker," said Lieutenant Sereth, her violet eyes hollow with exhaustion. She had not slept in 9 days. None of them had. Kale said nothing. There was nothing left to say. He pressed 2 fingers against the comm panel on his wrist, a habit more than a hope, and broadcast on the emergency frequency that had gone unanswered for 11 days. "This is Commander Kale Veyron of the Velkaran Resistance. If anyone is receiving this signal, we are the last. I repeat, we are the last. The Drachneth have taken everything. We are requesting any assistance from any allied force. Any force at all." He released the button. Static. Sereth turned away. Even she had given up pretending. Kale walked to the viewport and stared at the black mass of enemy ships hanging above like a ceiling made of death. He had fought the Drachneth for 22 years. He had watched his homeworld fall city by city, watched the Galactic Coalition fracture and scatter, watched species after species submit or burn. He had never surrendered, not once, not even when surrender meant survival. But hope? Hope had left him quietly, sometime in the night, like a friend who says nothing and simply does not return. "Commander." A young soldier, barely old enough to hold a weapon, touched his arm. "There's something on the long-range sensors." "Drachneth reinforcements," Kale said flatly. "No, sir." The boy's voice was strange. Uncertain in a different way than fear. "The signature is. I don't recognize it." Kale moved to the sensor console. The reading made no sense to him either. Not Drachneth. Not Velkaran. Not any coalition drive signature he had catalogued in 2 decades of war. Then the frequency crackled. Not static. A voice. "Velkaran Resistance, this is Admiral Ethan Cross of the Human Alliance 7th Expeditionary Fleet. We have received your distress signal. We are coming. Hold your position. I say again, hold your position. We are coming." The room went completely silent. Kale stared at the comm panel as if he had never seen one before. He had heard of humans, of course. Every species in the Outer Arms had. The youngest spacefaring civilization in the known galaxy. Barely 300 years since their first interstellar jump. A species so new that the Drachneth hadn't even considered them worth conquering yet. "Admiral Cross," Kale said carefully, "I want to be honest with you. The Drachneth have 1,700 warships in this system. If you have come out of goodwill, I am grateful. But I will not have more deaths on my conscience. Whatever fleet you have brought." "Commander Veyron." The voice on the other end was calm. Not the calm of ignorance. The calm of someone who had already run the numbers and liked his odds. "We have 2,312 ships. I strongly suggest you get your people away from the viewports." The Drachneth Supreme Commander Vorthats had never felt afraid. He had conquered 47 worlds. He had watched civilizations kneel. Fear was something that happened to other species, smaller species, weaker ones that had not yet learned that the universe belonged entirely to the strong. So when his sensor officer reported the jump signatures, hundreds of them, then 1,000, then over 2,000, he assumed a malfunction. "Recalibrate," he ordered. "Already done, Supreme Commander. The readings are confirmed." "What species?" There was a pause that Vorthats did not like. "Human, sir." He almost laughed. He had heard of humans. A footnote species. Children playing at war. One human ship is worth perhaps 1/3 of our weakest patrol craft. Let them come. We will add their debris to the field. He was still composing his dismissal when Admiral Ethan Cross's fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The first thing Cale noticed was the formation. Human warships did not spread out the way coalition vessels did. They did not hold the traditional engagement lines that every spacefaring civilization used, the lines that centuries of interstellar warfare had calcified into doctrine. Human ships moved like something alive, like a murmuration of birds seen from the ground, fluid and coordinated in a way that seemed impossible for vessels of that size. The second thing he noticed was the speed. They were already firing before the Drachneth had finished forming a response line. Not standard energy weapons, humans used something called kinetic slugs, inert masses of dense metal accelerated to a fraction of light speed, and the physics of that turned out to be catastrophic at scale. Drachneth shielding was designed to absorb and dissipate energy. It was not designed for a solid tungsten rod the size of a building moving at 40,000 kilometers per second. The first Drachneth cruiser did not explode. It simply came apart. "Sereth," Cale said quietly. "Are you seeing this?" She was. They all were. 23 survivors of the Velcaran resistance, faces pressed to the shattered viewport, watching in absolute silence as the sky above their dying world began, impossibly, to change. Admiral Ethan Cross stood at the center of the HACS Indomitable's bridge and did not raise his voice once. He didn't need to. Every station was crewed by people who had trained for this, who had drilled the Drachneth engagement protocols 600 times in simulation, who had studied every engagement record the Coalition had transmitted before it collapsed, who had spent 3 years building a doctrine specifically designed to fight an enemy that had never been beaten. Squadron 7, rotate on my mark, a mark. Squadron 12, push their left flank, I want them compressed. Missile batteries, target the command signatures, not the escorts. He paused. Glanced at his tactical officer. How are they reacting? Confused, sir. They're used to static engagement lines. Our movement is disrupting their targeting algorithms. Good. Ethan watched the display. 1,700 Drachneth ships, but ships designed to fight a certain kind of war against a certain kind of enemy. Not this. Tell Squadron 3 to begin the encirclement. And get me Commander Veron on the surface. The line connected in seconds. Commander Veron. Status? Cale's voice came back rough with something that was not quite emotion but was very close to it. We are watching from the bunker, Admiral. I am not sure I have words. You don't need any. Just stay low. This is going to get loud. Ethan paused. How many of your people are left down there? 23. 23. Ethan Cross had read the reports, 4,000 resistance fighters at the start of the Drachneth siege. He kept his voice level. Then we're going to make sure those 23 matter. Cross out. He turned back to his display. The Drachneth were trying to consolidate now, pulling their fleet into a defensive sphere, a sound tactic against any opponent who fought with energy weapons and needed sustained fire to punch through shields. Against kinetic bombardment from 2,000 ships moving in rotating attack vectors, it was a death formation. "Sir," said his tactical officer. "Vorthats is attempting to withdraw. He can try." He did try. He did not succeed. By the 4th hour, it was over. Not a rout. A dismantling, systematic, precise, almost surgical in its thoroughness. 216 Drachneth ships escaped into hyperspace. The remaining 1,500 were debris fields or forced surrenders. Cale Veron walked out of the bunker into open air for the first time in 11 days. The sky above Velcara Prime was black with wreckage and bright with stars. Real stars. The Drachneth fleet that had blotted them out was gone. A shuttle descended with the Human Alliance insignia on its hull. Admiral Ethan Cross stepped out. He was younger than Cale had expected. Mid-40s by human reckoning, young by any standard for a man carrying this much weight. He walked across the ruined surface of the Resistance compound with the easy stride of someone who had not yet learned how to carry victory with arrogance. He stopped in front of Cale and extended his hand, the human gesture of greeting that Cale had read about but never received. Cale took it. 23, Ethan said quietly. 23, Cale confirmed. Ethan Cross looked at the survivors gathered behind the commander. He looked at them for a long moment, at the hollow eyes, the bandaged wounds, the expressions of people who had forgotten what relief felt like and were only now remembering. Then we start rebuilding with 23, he said. And we don't stop. Cale Veyron had fought for 22 years. He had lost everything except his own refusal to quit. He had broadcast into static 11 days running, speaking to no one, because speaking was the only thing left. He had not cried since his homeworld's capital fell. He did not cry now either. But something came back into his eyes, something that had left quietly in the night, and this time it returned loudly, and it did not seem to be leaving again. Hope. Somewhere in the outer arms, word spread fast among the surviving species, the humans had come. The young ones. The ones no one had taken seriously. The Drachneth would spend years rebuilding and recalculating. They would not make the mistake of ignoring humanity again.